All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking to you again today. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. I always say that Wednesday is a good day for me. Always kind of in a better mood. Although the news is so depressing, man. It just continues to be. And I know people are like, "Hey, Hal, you're too much of a Debbie Downer," or what have you. I mean, I just call it like I see it. Things aren't good, man. They're just not. They're just not good. Ceasefire is still kind of holding, but it's a ceasefire. It's kind of a weird ceasefire because Israel just keeps killing Palestinians, it keeps killing Gazans, just not in the same numbers that it has been killing in the past 2 years. And of course, Israel's always killing Palestinians. That's just what Israel does, is it kills Palestinians. That's what Israel does. It's so depressing to me that in the media, now, the entire, I guess, traditional media, corporate media, whatever, lamestream media, whatever term you want to use, there are no pro-Palestine voices, except really the podcasters like myself and others who are doing this, same kind of work that I'm doing. But in the newspapers, I don't think you'll find a pro-Palestine journalist, right? In any daily newspaper in America. I haven't seen it. But there's so many defending Israel at every turn. Brett Stevens, why I'm afraid of Zoran Mamdani. Oh my God, he actually has expressed compassion and empathy for the victims of Israel. Oh, that's something I've got to be really afraid of. Scary, scary man, scary Muslim man. That's our media landscape. I saw this, I think it was Jimmy Dore. I've kind of moved away from Jimmy. He's definitely got like some MAGA tendencies, but I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater if I can avoid doing so. And again, I'm going to go back to Charlie Kirk. I was in the aftermath of his death. I said harsh things about him. And, it's not something that I ever found appealing, but it really looks like, I'm going to always say this, he was starting to come around on Israel. He was starting to recognize the huge problems that Israel is causing around the world, and even recognizing their inhumanity to the people of Palestine. Made him a problem for Israel and for Trump as well. A problem that went away when he was shot. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. Would love to talk to you. 240-242-5646. It's funny. I'm centering, at least in the thumbnail, this New York Times article. It's, I don't know if it's in the magazine that's coming out this Sunday. It's obviously online at this point. I have it, where they argue, at least through their headline, that the solution to our political problems, and specifically the problem of Trump, is for Democrats to embrace the center, to campaign as moderates. That's what works. And yet, if you delve down into that article, if you read it more closely, it actually basically says exactly what I've been saying for umpteen years. And that's why, like I said, I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I try really, really hard not to. There was some real value in that article by the New York Times, despite all of its failings, all of its corruption, its employment of these despicable hacks like Stevens, the aforementioned, and many others in that newspaper. But if you delve down into that editorial, it really does pretty much confirm what you hear on Halitics. And maybe that's a good opportunity for me to urge you, please do subscribe now. Glad to see the numbers. They trickle up. They're trickling up a little bit at a time. Please do click subscribe. Click like. Every interaction with our videos helps. I mean, it just does. It makes it just a little bit more available. It puts it in a few more feeds. I do think some of my videos do get thrown at the bottom of the barrel with the algorithm because I'm very, very pro-Palestine, right? And I'm very, very critical of Israel. I think that's a big problem. I mean, I'm a leftist. I'm a progressive economic populist. That's not going to go over well with the lords of technology who basically determine what you get to see. Not what you get to see, but what is promoted in your feed. So you may have to take an extra step. You may have to type Halitics into your YouTube search engine. You may have to type it into your Facebook page search engine. Whatever it is, do it. do it, please. And also, besides what I've already said in terms of the content, the comments, it would be great to have you call in. We are about solving problems here at Halitics, and I am not so arrogant. I'm pretty arrogant. I'm pretty cocky. I'm pretty certain I'm right about pretty much everything. But that said, I'm not so certain, cocky, that I can solve our problems without your help, without your support, and without your input. We need to do it together. Only by working together can we solve our problems. That's why I feel like it's so painful for me to find very, very few friends in institutions. I talked about this with Carlos on Monday, that the organization where we met, which was Our Revolution, actually recruited Carlos. So I actually met him before because I recruited him to work at Our Revolution. It's not really fighting for us. It's not fighting for working people. It's a huge problem. We are so on our own, and we're all desperate, I think, to find allies and people that we can work with. And that's really, again, a function I want Halitics to fill. I want that to be one of our functions, which is a place where like-minded leftists come together and work on addressing the really, really terrible problems we face. And again, the greatest problem, I think, right now, and apologies to the climate holocaust, which I have not talked about as much as I should. That's one of my big beefs, by the way. I mentioned Jimmy Dore. Jimmy Dore, Jimmy Dore, what did he do? So he did a program just maybe yesterday, maybe it must have been yesterday because I saw it yesterday, unless it was the day before that, where he highlighted Christiane Amanpour's discussion of the differential treatment afforded Israeli hostages in Hamas's care and Palestinian prisoners or hostages in Israeli hands. And Dore noted and played clips where Amanpour made the very unexceptional point. It's obvious to anyone paying attention that Hamas treated Israelis and other hostages, people from other countries than Israel, much better than Israel treated Palestinians who weren't even hostages. They were hostages, but they were prisoners, people that Israel just seized. And Israel treated them terribly, killed many, many, many of them, had their hands manacled behind them. There was a man, I was reported, I believe this is completely true, but if I'm wrong, correct me, who had been raped to death by the Israeli military. I think they just inserted, some kind of a object into his rectum repeatedly, destroying him, killing him, raping him to death. That is what Israel does. Many of the Palestinian prisoners, I believe, were malnourished, despite the fact that Israel has been conducting over 2 years of nonstop bludgeoning of a civilian population, killing tens of thousands, maybe probably hundreds of thousands. The prisoners that Hamas was holding came out of captivity in better condition than the ones that Israel was holding in safe spaces, right? Not where bombs weren't falling, where machine guns weren't, beating a tattoo against anyone who stuck their head up out of their tent. And even if it wasn't a tent, they might still get shot. Nevertheless, the Israelis held by Hamas were more likely to survive and were treated better than the Palestinians held by Israel. So Amanpour made that point. We all saw it. We all know it's true. And she then was forced to apologize. This is something that Jimmy Dore talked about. So I give him enormous credit for pointing out the hollowness, the immorality, the intellectual bankruptcy of CNN and of corporate media more generally, where Amanpour has to go on TV with her tail between her legs and say, I'm sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings when I said that Israel treats prisoners worse than Hamas. I mean, it's true. Isn't that what the media is supposed to do, is tell you the truth? All right, from Al Jazeera, I mentioned the killing by Israel continues, but in lower numbers, obviously. Israel kills 1 in Gaza adding to dozens killed since ceasefire. That's today's Al Jazeera. And then the article points out that they've killed dozens since the ceasefire took effect. And not only have they killed dozens, but the actual quality of life for the people in Gaza doesn't really appear to have really improved. I think there's a little less fear of being killed by random or targeted violence, although it's still there. But there's still hunger. There's still an absence of essential supplies, medical supplies, pharmaceuticals and like. They're not there. They're not getting in. Israel is doing everything, keeps sticking its foot over that line, the ceasefire line, trying to do more and more to rein in and hem in Palestinians, ultimately to go right back to activating its killing machine. And apparently Trump is trying to stop him. That's what we keep hearing. Maybe it's true. I hope it's true. This is a video. Now we're gonna jump around a little bit, although not. But try to remain on point as well. So I'm going to continue the conversation, but I want to play this video from a No Kings rally over the weekend that was in D.C. I wasn't at this rally. I should have gone, maybe. Yeah, I might have gone if I thought about it, because I know Code Pink was there and stood with Code Pink. But the pro-Palestine, pro-peace, pro-life rally goers were dissuaded, were pushed back. We're sidelined by others at these events. Due Dissidents, now I'll play this clip for you in a second, but I want to just say Due Dissidents host Russ talks about the New York rally in Harlem, and there were rallies all over New York City, where when he tried to start a Free Palestine chant, he was shushed down. And I guess some sort of a self-appointed rally leader came over and says, no, we're not doing that. That's too divisive. Not everyone here is comfortable with the Free Palestine message. Well, it's not congenial to democratic elites. That is true. But only 7% of Democrats now say they support Israel over Palestine, if that many. And only the 7% really reflects the number who support arming Israel at this juncture. This is the issue, one of the most important issues, one of the best issues for prying away from Republicans, from MAGA younger voters, is calling for an end to our support for Israel. And the Democratic-led No Kings rally leaders said, no, we're not going to go. We're not going to do something that's popular. We're not going to promote peace. Here you can see an example of it. And this is why I think so many of us feel so lost in our political culture.
Whoa! It's about our don't put your hands on her. News is just going to take a beautiful picture of this and paint us all as, like we're...
So this woman is very upset of the pro-Palestine flag that this gentleman who I met before is carrying, and she's very upset. She says, oh my God, someone will take a picture of it and they're going to paint us all as, and what does he say? Yeah, they're going to paint us all as... like we're...
pro-humanity, pro-anti-genocide, pro-humanity.
Right, yeah, pro-humanity, pro-anti. That's what they'll paint us as. And she's like, well...
Wrong. You're at the wrong event, dude.
I don't think so.
Well, it's the wrong event. How is it see, this is the thing that when I was talking to Arlen yesterday that frustrated me. These events are about, and Due Dissidents, I'm taking from them, nothing. They're about nothing. They're slogans. They're slogans like resistance, but there's no demands of power. And you know what they say about power? It concedes nothing without a demand. Well, they're not asking for anything from Trump. They're not even saying stop your ICE raids, keep the thugs off our city streets. It's not clear what they're even demanding from Trump. If anything, they just don't like him. Oh, he's a tyrant. He is. He's terrible. But what is it you want him to not do? Or what is it you want him to do? They don't even say.
I'm sorry.
Why do you think this is the wrong message here?
Because this is no kings. This is about the United States. It's about our democracy.
So a perfect example. She says, well, this is about our democracy. What better example of the absence of democracy in America is there than the fact that we continue, both parties support Israel, even though the great majority of Americans now don't, or at least the majority don't. What is there a better proof that we don't have a democracy? How can she possibly say that an event about democracy is not the right place, about our democracy is not the right place for No Kings event? It reflects a remarkable ignorance of America, indeed.
Whoa! It's about our democracy. Don't put your hands on her.
You're in a public place.
Okay, don't put
You're
that
in
on
a
me.
public
I'm
place.
just saying.
If you don't want to talk to him, but you just went up and yelled at him. Whoa.
And by the way, I just want to say that the bombs haven't stopped. I just watched 11 people get massacred this morning, and Israel has violated the ceasefire dozens of times, as we knew they would. So that's also why we're out here.
So, I mean, a perfect example of why the No Kings rally should have centered Palestinians and failed miserably. And really, I think loses just an extraordinary amount of credibility. Now, I've been harshly critical of Trump when it comes to Israel, when it comes to Palestine, and I will continue to be. This Truth Social post, which I saw yesterday, is chilling. It's absolutely chilling. It reflects remarkable, again, we're talking ignorance, or just flat out. I mean, Trump probably does know that Hamas isn't killing people, that Israel is the killer. I think Trump knows that. But, you know, he has to participate in the charade, probably in part because, you know, his son-in-law, Jared, many others are invested in ultimately ethnic cleansing and ultimately taking from the Palestinian people the Gaza Strip so they can put resorts and luxury condos along the Mediterranean coast. So rather than criticizing Israel, rather than challenging Israel for the dozens, if not hundreds, it's killed since the ceasefire, it's constant violation of the terms. What does Trump write? If Hamas continues to kill people in Gaza, which was not the deal, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. Lovely. So he's saying, hey, it's not enough that Israel is wiping out the people of Palestine with American weapons. America will join in the fun. That's the message from the Donald. Now, I look at the date line. It's October 16th, so it's 6 days ago. Today's the 22nd, so that was Thursday. And it's unclear why he posted that then. Maybe that was a sop to Netanyahu. Because more recently, this Sunday, so, you know, again, this is not in any way praise of Trump, but it does appear that Trump, at least for now, is trying, and I guess succeeding, because Netanyahu is afraid of Trump to a degree. And by the way, this really, if anything proves just how awful Harris Biden were, how they failed so miserably to protect Palestinians, and how they green-lighted the genocide, this does it. As awful as Trump is, despite giving Netanyahu pretty much everything he wants, even more to a degree, even more so than Harris Biden, who at least took away the one-ton bombs for a while, anyway, if not until Trump came back to office. He has been keeping somewhat of a leash on Netanyahu. Trump administration's strategy is to try to keep Netanyahu from resuming an all-out assault against Hamas, or really an all-out assault on Palestine. And apparently they are sort of keeping him a little bit in check, at least for now. Now, who knows how long that strategy will be? It may change at any point. Trump may decide he's, more interested in building a wall or whatever, some other shiny object, completely paving over every green space around the White House. That might be another one of his exciting fun activities, or piloting a bomber or fighter pilot, at least virtually, so he can drop poop on people. I mean, he has lots of exciting interests, so that they all could distract him in the end from keeping Netanyahu from killing, going back to killing hundreds, if not thousands, of Gazans on a daily basis. Now, the reason I say 1,000, because the one kind of check that Hamas had was the hostages, and now they're gone. Now they don't have them anymore. So that's why I still give Trump no credit, none. I mentioned earlier in the program, right, that I'm so troubled by the fact that we just don't have institutions that we can look to and say, these are moral, these are humane, these groups are, these people, these these newspapers, whatever you want to call them, whatever they are, they're on our side. They're for peace. They're for justice. So obviously, like an institution that I at one point did have respect for, the Holocaust Museum, obviously completely failing. Completely, for them, never again just means never again will Jews, will we allow Jews to be murdered because they're Jewish. But that said, we're totally fine with Israel killing lots and lots of people because they're Palestinian, or maybe all of them because they're Palestinian. It's not a problem for us. So that's an institution that's failed completely. It's about our revolution, ginning up fears that aren't really warranted that Mamdani could lose. Now, I do have a fear that Mamdani could lose, but I felt that their fundraising email was disingenuous, and was done for the purpose of shaking a few pennies out of people's pockets, not really to help Zoran win, and that frustrated me greatly. But I'm afraid he could lose too. I mean, if Sliwa drops out, the numbers look like it could be very, very close. So it looks like Sliwa isn't going to drop out. I like ranked choice voting. I think that would be the best answer. But to be fair, if there was ranked choice voting, it's possible that could hurt Mamdani if Sliwa's voters put, the great majority of them put Cuomo second. That could hurt Zoran's chances. So there's real fear, right? He could still lose. I'm very worried. So, but again, institutions that betray us, there's so many of them. The Democratic Party, obviously. Organized religion. There are some really good rabbis out there. You just don't hear about them. Here's the Jewish Telegraph Agency, big time Zionist Institute media. A prominent New York City rabbi he is prominent, this guy Cosgrove, urges congregants to vote against Mamdani in Shabbat sermon, plus Sliwa takes on Ackman. So that's good that Sliwa's taking on Ackman. It's really awful. This guy, Lloyd Cosgrove, he's a big, or Elliot, I'm sorry, I don't want Lloyd Blankfein. He was the head of, maybe that's who I was thinking, a Jewish guy. He was the head of Goldman Sachs for a while. I don't think he is anymore. Elliot Cosgrove, there he is, young rabbi, delivers his Shabbat sermon on the 18th, and he says, hey, you got to vote against Zoran no matter what. He's a grave threat. He's not a threat. He's a threat, I guess, if you're somebody who's looking forward to seeing Netanyahu visit New York without fear of being arrested for his war crimes, then I guess he's a threat. Otherwise, he's not a threat to Jews. But Cosgrove ginning up fear, uncertainty, and doubt in his congregation. And again, he is very influential. He's well known in the city. I know that his, I'm sorry, man, I banged that thing. That's terrible. I know that his Cosgrove's, that is, followers have been passing out copies of this sermon, and they have like on it yellow capos for Mamdani. So capo is supposed to be like a Jewish person who helped the Nazis. And there were, I guess, capos in the concentration camps. Their choice was either you clean up the waste of our victims, the Nazi victims, or we'll kill you. So I'm not going to condemn the capos, but it's like a real slur that Jews level against other Jews, like you support anti-Semites. I think in this context, it's a great honor to be called a kappa because you're willing to take on the killers of Israel, the killers who support Israel. But that is the slur that's being levied against Mamdani supporters by many Jews. And it's really scary. I mean, you've got many millions of dollars now just being poured into attack ads against him. And I understand he's still winning, and it doesn't look good for Cuomo, and he probably will win. And also, so far, so good, Slee was saying, F you. I don't care if you lose because of me, which he doesn't think will happen anyway. He thinks that's not really going to happen. But who knows? Cosgrove says, yeah, he's a danger. Just so awful. Just so awful to see this. One of Cosgrove's arguments why you should support Cuomo, even if you don't like, and by the way, it's all about Cuomo. It's not like, well, vote for either Sliwa or Cuomo, just don't vote for Mamdani. No. In fact, they're pushing hard the Jewish community, the institutional Jewish community. Not 38% of Jews actually support Mamdani, 42% support Cuomo. So it's almost a dead heat, actually. I think it's very disappointing that more Jewish New Yorkers don't support Mamdani. But I will say, I'm not even so sure it's all about religion. I think that's part of it for the older, more conservative Jewish voters, some of whom are not affluent. But Jews are very affluent everywhere, and especially in New York. Many of the prominent lawyers at the big law firms who are taking home millions every year, an annual share, right? Their share of the partnership, that they're the elite. They don't want their taxes to go up. They're Jewish landlords who are afraid that they'll lose some revenue if Mamdani institutes the rent freeze that he talks about. So these are issues that transcend religion. If you're a partner in a big law firm, no matter what religion you are, Mamdani does pose a threat. If you're a big shot financier, hedge fund manager, and yeah, a lot of them are Jewish, some are not. But you're not concerned for your pocketbook because you're Jewish. You're concerned because you're rich. And there does happen to be a significant percentage of wealthy Jewish New Yorkers. So I think that's part of the reason why you see Mamdani doing relatively poorer when it comes to the Jewish vote. Here's what Cosgrove says, though. Love of Israel has to take precedence over other loves. So is that dual loyalty? Does that mean that Jewish Americans or American Jews like myself, we have to put Israel? Is that dual loyalty, or is that just loyalty? It's loyalty to Israel, not even my home country, not even my native land. I'm supposed to put Israel ahead of the United States. That seems to be what Elliot Cosgrove, rabbi of the very, very prestigious, very affluent, conservative Park Avenue Synagogue, is saying. Well, I think that sounds kind of anti-Semitic to me, that you're telling us that we're supposed to put Israel first. Now, according to the World Jewish Congress, accusing Jews of dual loyalty, it's not only a myth, it's anti-Semitic. So Cosgrove is saying, he's not just claiming there's dual loyalty, he's saying you got to put Israel first. Well, according to the World Jewish Congress, anti-Semites allege that the true allegiance of Jews is to fellow Jews. Now, they don't say to Israel. Look at that. They're very, very quick to note that if they say that your allegiance is to Israel, they'll have to plead guilty. Yes, we do support Israel. But that's what allegiance to Israel is. Allegiance to Israel is allegiance to fellow Jews above the United States, because Israel's a Jewish state, self-proclaimed. Elliot Cosgrove, rabbi, is absolutely saying to Jews, yes, your loyalty is to Israel. Well, it's not a myth, it's reality. At least for him and for his congregants who follow his direction. It's not a trope. It's not dishonest. It's not false. That's not some dishonest claim that's being used to vilify her. It's just true. You put Israel ahead of the United States. That's what you're doing. And that's really, really, really bad. You shouldn't do that. You live in this country. This is the country that has allowed you, by the way, great opportunities. And Israel is also a really, really bad place right now. It's a horrible country. It's evil. You should never put Israel ahead of the United States, especially today. Not that you should be happy with the United States. It's terrible. Our government is putting Israel first. But what Cosgrove is doing is he's actually confirming that the truth of the claim that Jews do have, at least some, and these are representative Jews too, that their loyalty is first and foremost to Israel. Now, I love what World Jewish Congress does. They really are so crafty. So they recognize right away, that's why they don't say loyalty to Israel is a myth or it's not right to call someone anti-Semitic or it's not right to criticize Jews for being loyal to Israel. No, that's okay. You're allowed to be loyal to Israel. Of course, that's what they're claiming. But they don't call it, it's emotional connection. It's an emotional connection we have. We can't deny it. You can be loyal citizens and still feel strong connections. Yeah, but Cosgrove is saying you put Israel first. That's not loyalty. Loyalty is you put your own country first. I guess that myth, maybe it's not such a myth after all. Maybe it's a legit critique of many Jews in this country and many Zionists across the, of any religion or stripe. They put Israel ahead of their own country, over our own interests. Now, I would say I was very, look, Cosgrove is a conservative. The conservative rabbis, the conservative shuls have tended to be very, very Zionist, very, very pro-Israel. And it's awful. It's inexcusable. It's unforgivable. What's even worse, to my way of thinking, is that these Reformed temples, including like the one that, I don't belong to now, but that I attended when I was a kid, obviously it's a different rabbi, but they continue to maintain an allegiance to Israel. They continue to refuse to call out Israel's crimes. And you can see from this, I think the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue, I'm not real well versed in these, but my understanding is that this was one of the leaders in the civil rights movement, the interfaith civil rights movement, where church leaders, pastors, priests, rabbis, imams all joined forces to support Dr. King and the civil rights movement. And the Stephen Wise Free Synagogue was a leader. They were outspoken against Jim Crow, against racism. And now, Rabbi Hirsch here is saying, no, I'm worried about this Imam Dani. I don't know. He might not be good for us Jews. It's just awful. It's just awful. And again, what's our home? Where do we go? Now, look, I'm not religious. I don't really care, but people who, care about their religion, but they also care about Palestinian lives, they're really kind of at a loss. It reminds me of when I was back on the old Monterey days, talking about the Catholic scandal, the priest scandal, the priests who were molesting children and adolescents. And I got so many calls, so many people, they were lapsed Catholics or they were hurt Catholics. I couldn't believe it. That show got maybe more calls than I had, and a lot of new callers too. They felt so betrayed by their church. You don't think there are a lot of Jews out there who feel betrayed because their synagogue leaders refuse to call out Israel, continue to defend Israel, continue to criticize Israel's critics, there are many Jews who are feeling lost, bereft because of that. Hirsch said, most Jews are deeply offended by your ongoing accusations of Israeli genocide. Really? This is amazing. The JTA, Jewish Telegraph Agency, I think it's agency, which is super pro-Israel, super Zionist, says, no, but 4 in 10 American Jews, yeah, that's less than half. So I guess the other half plus 1 or 2, right? Because 4 and 10, so maybe 6, 5, I don't know. Probably some don't really or haven't made a decision. And I'm sure some will say, well, it's not genocide, but it's really, really bad. I don't like it. It is genocide, but I'm sure there are a lot of Jews who say, well, I'm not going to call it genocide. In fact, I know there are Jews because this is what they've told me. Well, I don't like the word genocide. I don't really want to call Israel a genocidal state. I don't want to say the Jewish state is genocidal, but it's really bad. I don't like it. I wish they wouldn't do it. 4 in 10 American Jews say it's genocide. They're not offended, Hirsch. And guess what? In New York, I already told you, 38-42, 38% support Mamdani, 42% support Cuomo. And I do believe a significant reason for that, which has nothing to do with religion, but it's purely based on economics. 240-242-5646 would love to talk to you. 240. By the way, folks, this is a good opportunity for you to call me because I'll only be on tomorrow during the rest of this week. I will be off Friday and I'll be off Monday. So if you have a yen to talk to Hal, you better try me before 2 p.m. East Coast time today, being Wednesday, the 22nd. This is, I wanted to show, again, Jewish Telegraphic Agency or whatever. I try to read as much media as I can. So one of the, I don't know if it's disappointing, but it's just understandable. The billionaires pushing Sliwa to drop out. They say, no, you got to drop out. You got to endorse Cuomo. We can still beat him. We can still beat the Democratic Socialist commie, pinko bastard, Mamdani, Muslim, scary person. We can beat him. Well, this is what Curtis Sliwa said to Bill Ackman. He's a jerk. You're a jerk. Get your own votes, Mario. I can't do a Sliwa accent. He has a real Brooklynese, but I can't do it. But you're a jerk. Get your own votes, Cuomo. I don't know. Maybe that's probably pretty bad. I don't know. Good on you, Sliwa. I want you to stay in it. I mean, I believe in ranked choice voting. I think that the candidate that most voters prefer should win. So, based on that belief system, if indeed all of Sliwa's voters would prefer that Cuomo be mayor and would vote for him second after Sliwa, if that's true, and if the Sliwa voters and the Cuomo voters together are more than 50% of the New York City voting electorate, I'd have to say, under those circumstances, philosophically, I would say Cuomo should be mayor. Now, there's a lot of caveats and ifs. The media is completely dead set against Mamdani. They're obviously poisoning the well against him. There's a lot of pressure on voters through their faith leaders, which I think is very is not appropriate. I don't think that should be allowed. So there's a lot of undemocratic pressure being brought to bear on New York City voters, which I think is a big reason that Cuomo might be preferred by more voters than Mamdani. I think if the New York Times was doing its job, if the New York Times was, coming clean with its editorials and papers and reports, it would definitely push more voters into the Mamdani camp. So there are, our democracy is very fragile, very frayed. The institutions continue to betray us. They continue to promote the interests of the 1%. That said, when you have an election, the votes should go determine who wins. I'll concede, if indeed they had ranked choice voting and if indeed Cuomo was going to get more votes, first and second place votes, than Mamdani, I would have to say then under those circumstances in a democracy, Cuomo should be the mayor. I don't want Cuomo to be the mayor. I want Mamdani to be the mayor. I don't want Sliwa to drop out. I think even if Sliwa did drop out, Mamdani would still win. I don't think 75, 80%, 90% of Sliwa voters would vote for Cuomo. But I don't want to have that even be a possibility. So I don't want Sliwa dropping out. 240-242-5646. I liked this tweet here from Kimmy Ann. I believe this is Twitter. She's put side by side the track AIPAC slides or little, I don't know what you call them, memes that they put together for Trump and Cuomo. So these are two birds of a feather. If you're really serious about resisting Trump, if your whole thing is, as many Democrats I hear, first things first, we got to defeat Trump. You got to stop Trump. Trump's candidate is Cuomo. Trump wants Cuomo to be the mayor of the state of New York. Trump knows he can do business with Cuomo. Trump knows that Cuomo will not raise any fuss about ICE thugs in the streets of New York City. Trump knows that his buddy Bibi can visit New York City without fear of being arrested by NYPD if Cuomo is mayor. So Trump supports Cuomo. You can't have it both ways. If you're a Trump hater, then you can't support Cuomo. It's one or the other. It's either I can't stand them both or I like them both. And you saw at the No Kings rally that obviously there are a lot of people who are at the No Kings rally who really don't have much of a problem with Trump. At least they're not going to go after his policies. They say they don't like him, but when it comes to voting against him, they're not going to do that. So Kimmy Ann says here they are against Mamdani because he refuses AIPAC money. Well, he doesn't just refuse it. It's not just that Cuomo takes AIPAC money. Cuomo actually represented Netanyahu. He's on his legal team. And Trump there, $230 million. That's what they're calling the Adelson, Shel Nadelson's widow's contributions to his campaign. So, yeah, you vote for Cuomo, you're voting for Trump. It's that simple. You vote for Cuomo, you're voting for Trump. 240-242-5646. All right, I want to get to this New York Times article. I spent a lot of time putting it together in terms of the slides and everything. I could talk about it tomorrow because we're 17 minutes. So this is the headline here. And by the way, hat tip to friend of Halitics, Jack Quirk, for bringing this to my attention, because I did not see this article. He posted this on his Facebook page. He posted a link, and I was like, oh, I got to read this. So the editorial board says the partisans are wrong. Moving to the center is the way to win. And of course, that certainly backs up if it's true, what the editorial board has been telling you forever. Yeah, you should vote for centrist. That's why we endorse Amy Klobuchar and, well, Elizabeth Warren. We're going to call her a progressive in this article, but she's pretty centrist, let's face it. That's why we endorse Amy Klobuchar, not Bernie, in 2020. That's why we endorse Hillary Clinton, not Bernie, in 2016, even though Bernie had the best chance to beat Trump in both elections. True, Biden did win in 2020, though. That's why we endorsed Harris. That's why we endorsed Hillary in 2008, because we believe in the center, the centrists, the moderates. That's who we need to run our country. They know what's best. That's what the editorial board is trying to tell you. So don't fall for these democratic socialists or the extremists on the right either. We don't like them much either, although we don't dislike them nearly as much as we can't stand those lefties. So the evidence that the way to win is, according to the New York Times, vast. It's just vast. And they give some examples. Republicans frittered away winnable races in Alabama, New Hampshire, and elsewhere over the past decade by nominating extremist candidates. And look, Susan Collins, the moderate, is the only sitting senator who represents a state that reliably votes the other way in presidential elections. Yeah, I mean, Sherrod Brown did lose, but he was a centrist, right? Pretty centrist. He lost. The Democrat brand is really toxic, and it's only if you're a Democrat who's known for fighting for the working man, working woman, that you're going to win in a purple state or a red state. That's the issue. But yeah, Collins, I guess, I was thinking about this. New Hampshire has, I believe, 2 Democratic senators. I believe is Hassan, and I don't know who the other one is. I think they're 2, but New Hampshire isn't a red state anymore. Georgia, didn't Trump won Georgia. Georgia has 2 Democratic senators. They're pretty centrist. So according to the Times, because Susan Collins is the one moderate Republican who represents a state that reliably votes the other way, this proves that voters like moderates, that in a purple state or in a red state, a moderate can win, a moderate Democrat. In a blue state, a moderate Republican can win. And they point out that, hard lefties like AOC, is she really that far to the left, and Bernie don't represent any swing districts or state. So I guess that's true. I mean, as far as that goes, okay. I mean, again, the Democrat Party is not known as a party that fights for workers. So people in purple states or red states who care about the working class aren't going to vote Democratic. And that's the only kind that can win. If you're in a red state or a purple state, the only kind of Democrat who can win is one who is known as a fighter for workers. Sherrod Brown kind of bucked the trend a little bit because he did come across as pro-union. But in the end, he was pretty much a standard issue Democrat. And he lost to a really bad Republican. I think it's DeWine, right? No, was it J.D. Vance? He lost to J.D. Vance. Not sure. 240-242-5646. Sorry about that. All right. Marcy Kaptur from Ohio, supposedly a centrist. I don't know. America's gotten off course. Now, this is where it gets interesting. This is where the article really spoke to me, and it really made the points that I've been making forever. As Rep. Kaptur said, America's off course. The far left is ignoring millions illegally crossing the border. I don't think they were doing that, but okay. And trying to defund the police. And the far right is taking away women's rights and, in blue, this is the important part, protecting greedy corporations at every turn. That's the message that we need the left, to the extent there is a left, I would hope Democrats would embrace. Go after the greedy corporations and the billionaires. That's what you have to do. That's an unabashed, progressive, populist message. If you look, there's nothing that Kaptur says there that supports the status quo, that supports the billionaires. In fact, the argument that the far left is ignoring millions illegally crossing the border is actually a pretty populist message, because the impact of undocumented workers actually is to keep wages lower. They do negatively impact on the wages of American workers, and they do increase the profits of American corporations or companies that do business in this country, whether they're American or not. So, in a way, when you talk about illegal immigration, you're actually promoting a populist message. And I don't like it because they're human beings. The immigrants are people who deserve a decent quality of life, just like every other person. Democrats, it's a tough needle to thread, right? Because you're talking to people who are struggling themselves, who can barely make it themselves, and you're saying to them, well, but what about these poor people coming in from Guatemala, coming in from Mexico, coming in from South America, coming in from Haiti? Their lives are worse than yours. We need to figure out a way to say to the American voter, we're going to make your life better. We're going to guarantee you health care. You're going to have more than enough to live a decent life. Not a whole lot more, but enough. And we're going to take away, who's going to pay for that? The billionaires. That's the winning message. And you can see it. You can see it in this New York Times article. That's this op-ed or this editorial. That's the winning message. Now, the Times doesn't want you to take that away from this because, let's face it, it's a billionaire's newspaper. No, the owners aren't billionaires and their profits are probably down, although they're the only one that I guess makes some money. But their advertisers are the billionaires, and the editor, the publishers, rub elbows with billionaires at their clubs. And even if they're not billionaires, they're highly regarded and they're respected. And it's, they do favors for billionaires' kids and give them jobs and that and this, that, and the other thing. So they're elite. The top reporters at the paper, the publisher, if you're a top reporter, you're very well poised to get paying gigs on CNN and MSNBC and maybe even Fox, and to have your books published and actually promoted and to sell. So this is a paper that is by and to a significant degree for the billionaires. They don't want their editors. The last thing that editorial board wants is for you to take away from it. Well, what we need is a really unabashed populist message that demands the billionaires pay far higher taxes. In fact, that demands an end to billionaires. That's not the message they want you to take away. So look, polls show that most voters prefer capitalism to socialism. Well, when you give them a choice between two isms and socialism has been demonized up the yin-yang, sure, I guess people would say, yeah, maybe on balance, we prefer a market economy than some sort of big government socialism, I guess. But if you look at more, what you also see is here, they support class-based affirmative action. In other words, we help people out who are poor, not based on their race, but because they're poor, regardless of their race. That's what voters support. It says that they support it. You know what that is? That's called economic justice. That's called not just leveling the playing field, but making sure that everyone gets their shot. Not just that they get their shot, they get enough. That's what voters want. And yes, they don't like they don't believe, as I don't either, that trans girls should play in girls' sports. I agree that that's where I am too. That's hardly what I would call, I guess that's moderate on the trans issue. But it's not what moderate politicians support. They don't support class-based affirmative action. Not at all. Class-based affirmative action is you raise taxes on the rich. They don't have so much. It means that you make jobs available to poor people. That's not what you hear from moderate Democrats at all. 240-242-5646. That's not what abundance is about. Abundance isn't about promoting unions and bringing up the people at the bottom. Not at all. It's just let's free up corporations and businesses. So this message is not the New York Times message, not what they're promoting, but they kind of sideswipe it with that nonsense about most voters don't like capitalism, don't like socialism. Except when you actually ask voters, when it comes to specific issues, are you a socialist or a capitalist? Well, guess what? At least when it comes to healthcare, you know what they are? You know what voters are in this country when it comes to healthcare? Socialists. What is Medicare for All? Socialized medicine. 59% of Americans support it. This is July 4th of this year. 36%, more than a third, strongly, 23% support it somewhat. 50, almost 60%. It's a landslide. And more than twice as many support it than oppose it. It's not against 59-41, which would still be a landslide. is 59, 27%, 14% aren't even sure. If they were to understand it, I can guarantee you the 14% who don't really know what exactly Medicare for All is, don't fully understand it. I can guarantee you some of those folks have checked out. They're like, you know what? This society sucks. It's not doing anything for me. I don't care. I don't trust government. I don't trust big business. I don't care about any of that stuff. Those people, if they lived in a country that had socialized medicine, they would support it because they could go to the doctor and they would get treated. And they wouldn't have to reach it in their pocket and pull out the rent money to pay the doctor. So notwithstanding the New York Times claim that, well, when it comes to ask, do you like capitalism or do you like socialism? Most say capitalism. Guess what? Most people want government-provided, socialized medicine. So in fact, it's not even true what the New York Times says. Most Florida voters in red states support a $15 minimum wage. That's not raw, unfiltered capitalism. That's not even Democrat moderates didn't support $15 minimum wage. When they had a chance to enact it, they didn't. So, no, when it comes to economic issues, we're to the left. Leftist policies win. And the Times acknowledges this a little bit. They really do. They can't quite, they acknowledge it because they say, well, even Trump. Well, Trump's such an extremist. Yeah, he's an extremist on some social issues. Yeah, for sure. Especially when it comes to immigration. Yeah, he's horrible. And war, which, by the way, never makes it in this. They never, because, the New York Times supports war. They support the Ukraine war. They support the genocide of Palestine. Most Americans don't. Most Americans oppose the Ukraine war, which is a big reason Trump won, by the way. Most Americans oppose Israel's genocide and are supportive of it, which is a big reason Trump won, by the way. They don't talk about that. They don't mention it because they don't want to send the message, hey, Democrats, hey, Chucky boy, hey, Hakeem, let's back off our support for Israel a little bit if you want to win elections. They don't want that message out there because their advertisers, probably, maybe their subscribers support the Israeli genocide. And they bought into the lie that we need, to punish Putin. This is all about stopping Putin in Ukraine rather than it's all about a war that we fomented. Even Trump highlights this pattern, though the Times admits it, extreme as he is on certainly immigration. He did reject the more right-wing views when it comes to economic issues. So again, when you talk about economics, Americans are to the left, which is what I've been saying forever. Forever. Would you support workers, Democrats? Please, please, please. By the way, would you also be pro-peace? Because that wins you too elections. And the New York Times article makes this clear. The editorial makes this clear. So on Social Security, Medicare, and global trade, what's the trade policy? Tariffs. It's not free trade. It's not Clinton free trade. It's not Obama free trade. It's not W. Bush free trade. Or H.W. Bush free trade. Or Reagan free trade. It's none of, or Biden free trade. Or Hillary free trade. It's not that. It's tariffs. Guess what? That's to the left. That's economic populism. That's not neoliberalism. That's economic populism. And what about Social Security and Medicare? Well, guess what? Look at Trump. Look what Trump put on his website. I want to just put this up there. Now, Trump's awful, right? He's slashed those. He's a liar. He's a phony. But guess what? He knows where the voters are. Trump will always protect Social Security and Medicare. Wow. That's kind of a leftist message. That's not a capitalism over socialism. Last I checked, Social Security and Medicare, that's not really socialism. I mean, that's not really capitalism at all. March 11. So, notwithstanding the New York Times claim that centrism will save us and moderation will save us, in fact, it's economic populism and socialism in many cases that is the winning message for Democrats. All right, I got a little bit more here. They talk about how moderate politicians like Obama, Clinton, and Kennedy can win elections, which is true. They were, I think, all moderate. I agree with that assessment. And they all did a lot of harm to our country. All three of them, Obama, Clinton, and Kennedy, with the free trade, with bailing out the big banks, not the big bank victims. That's what Obama did. That did a lot of harm to our country. Obamacare was not a raging success. It has done some good things, but on balance, I would have to say it's a failure. Okay? Clinton promoted NAFTA. That led to millions of jobs lost. He promoted and signed the Glass-Steagall repeal. That was a significant factor in the crash in 2008. Clinton did a lot of harm to our country. Those are just two examples. I could go on. John F. Kennedy cut the top marginal tax rate from 90% to 70%. That's a problem. That's a big problem. He also was not a champion of civil rights. It took LBJ, a true populist, to bring the civil rights movement to its apogee. So, yes, those guys won. Yes, they were all very charismatic and good speakers and good looking with sex appeal and all that. Yeah, they all had that. But the policies themselves did not generate a permanent Democratic majority or anything close. What did generate enormous popularity for Democrats was the New Deal. It was when you materially improve quality of life for American people. And that's what this New York Times article just simply will not acknowledge. And that's because they don't want the quality of life for American people to materially improve, because if it did, that would mean there'd be a little less, or a lot less. Let's say a lot. That would mean the slice of pie that's reserved for the billionaires would be greatly shrunk. I know what a tragedy we all think that would be. Sarcasm alert. For the New York Times, that would be a problem. And that's why they will simply not acknowledge the reality that their op-ed, if you read through it, tells you. True economic populism, goring the rich man's ox, taking for the poor, Robin Hood, right? I don't want to say stealing from the rich, making them pay, forcing them, okay, for you libertarians who don't like government violence, forcing the billionaires at the point of a gun to disgorge some of their ill-gotten gains. That's what wins elections and builds permanent political majorities. This guy kind of sort of gets it. I don't love Graham Plattner all the time. I mean, I like him. I like Mamdani the best of the Democrats. Here's what he has to say.
I've gotten into this because I feel like we need to try something new. We need to send up candidates who don't represent the establishment. There's a lot of
I want to stop that for a sec, because when he said that, and I didn't show you all of that New York Times article, that's a big part of the appeal of many politicians, is they're demanding change. They don't represent the establishment. In fact, they point out with respect to Trump that he was calling for changes, sweeping changes of both political parties. Let me show you that, because that was a pretty important quote. Maybe I don't have it here. That these folks are demanding a sweeping change. Yeah, let me show that. I think, yeah. Let me put this up real quick and we'll go back to Plattner, because this is, again, what I've been saying. And the New York Times, all right, better late than never, I suppose, but the way it's spun is the opposite of my message. My message is Democrats have to go, or we have to vote hard left when it comes to economic matters. This 20th century, the moderation that they call for, it's not what I would call moderation. It's combative and populist. Is that moderate? I don't think it is. They acknowledge it. Yes, it's combative and populist. That's not moderate. It's left of center in economics. Yeah, right of center on some social issues. But the big issue, what people care most about, is their own life. Do I have enough food? Can I pay the rent? Can I pay for healthcare? Can I send my kid to college? That's a big reason that the Americans, by the way, are we're willing to embrace Trump's war on immigrants. Because again, if you increase the supply of labor, which is what allowing or having more immigrants does, it increases the supply of labor. That means you have lower costs for labor, which means wages drop. So yes, we're left of center on economics and maybe right of center depending on the social issue. This new centrism, isn't this amazing the way they torture language, this Times editorial board? The new centrism promises sweeping change. It's funny because I never thought of centrism as promising sweeping change. That to me isn't sweeping. That isn't centrism. Sweeping change is not centrism, and criticizes the two parties as out of touch. Well, who's doing that? We just watched him. Who's doing exactly what the New York Times says you got to do to win elections? Graham, this guy right here. Let's go for it again one more time.
I've gotten into this because I feel like we need to try something new. We need to send up candidates who don't represent the establishment. There's a lot.
All right, sweeping change, criticizing both parties. Isn't that what Graham Plattner's doing?
Establishment angst right now. And I fear that by going with the old tired playbook that we've used, we may yet again fail to unseat Susan Collins. Even though
sure sounds like they would, right? I mean, that's what the Times is saying is you got to be, outside the establishment. And he's saying if we keep promoting the same old stuff, the same centrism, we're going to lose.
Than she's ever been. And so essentially my pitch is I don't have to read a New York Times article to learn about how to talk to Trump voters. They're my neighbors. They're the guys I work next to. I know how to talk to them. I know how to connect with them. They have the same issues that I do, certainly when it comes around health care and housing and affordability.
I think that's exactly what the Times just said. When they say about Medicare, they don't want Medicare taken away from them. In fact, what they do want, and I showed you, is Medicare for all. So it sounds like Plattner's right there.
I want to be able to appeal across the political divide here in Maine of working people and touch on issues that materially change working people's lives on a daily basis.
All right, so that's the guy that you want going up against Susan Collins. The guy that Chuck Schumer wants, and I presume the New York Times does too, Janet Mills. How is she? What is she known for? Now, I'm not saying that this is totally fair. I'm not saying she's not an economic populist. I'm saying you want to win elections. And what is Janet Mills most known for right now, I think in and out of Maine, is that she fought Trump. She fought hard against Trump on transgender athletes in sports. And this is exactly what Americans don't agree with Democrats on, right? This is where Americans are saying, we don't believe that trans girls should be competing against biological girls in sports. And that's the issue that is championed by the Democratic Party leadership's choice to run against Susan Collins. I mean, could you be, I don't want to say stupid. I don't want to say tone deaf. I don't want to say politically inastute. I want to say pure corruption. They would Chuck Schumer, he knows that Graham Plattner's a better candidate. He knows that Zohran Mamdani is a good candidate, that the Democrat Party needs to embrace these people if they want to become popular. They want to win elections. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, they know this much better than I do. But guess what they also know? Their golden parachutes might not open quite as beautifully for them if they start taking on the billionaire class, if they start supporting candidates who actually will raise taxes on the rich, who actually will criticize Israel, vote, as Plattner has said he would, against funding Israel, would not vote for Schumer to be the Democratic leader, would arrest Netanyahu if he comes to New York because he wants to see a musical or something on Broadway. So that's why. That's pure corruption. That's pure self-interest. That is why the Democratic elites are backing a Janet Mills who doesn't punch any of the right boxes and is the most likely to lose to Susan Collins, over Graham Plattner, who is just the opposite. And that's why the New York Times, to a degree, certainly I give them credit for being honest, in the wording, in the actual body of the op-ed, or the editorial, I should say. It's not an op-ed. An op-ed is by someone other than the editorial. The editorial board's position is that moderates are the way to go to win elections. As soon as you read the article, you realize not at all. Economic populism, leftist, even socialist policies are what the American people want. And if you promote those, you're most likely to win elections, whether you're Trump or you're a Democrat. And here you go, the poll. Plattner, best positioned Maine Dem to defeat Susan Collins. But Democratic leaders would rather lose to Susan Collins than win with someone who will take wealth and power away from the 0.1%. That's going to do it for me today. I will be back tomorrow and then off for a couple of days, couple of weekdays, and then back again Tuesday. I look forward to speaking to you, though, again tomorrow. And I hope not just speaking to you, but with you. Some folks call me tomorrow on the Free for All. Have a great afternoon, and thank you so much for being part